if you want to start, first of all, pick a niche, like find a community that you want to work with, find a community that you feel connected to, find a community that needs your service. Pick a community and just find the niche in that community and serve at the
How do you
highest level.
envision, for Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we delve into the ever changing and accelerating pace of global change and its impact on our lives. I'm your host, John Paul Flores, broadcasting live from the New World Studio. Today, we're diving into the world of AI and automation. As an enthusiast and expert in lead generation, I will guide you through understanding and leveraging these technologies for your business and for your personal use. And don't forget, AI and automation might be unstoppable forces, but that doesn't mean you are powerless. Tune in to learn how to make them work for you and not the other way around. But first, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we navigate the changing world around us. I'm your host, John Paul Flores, specializing in lead generation and AI automation, here to help you understand how our world is changing and what it means for you. Today, we have a very special guest, Dionnie Wynter Pfunde, aka the Legal Rebel. A trailblazer in U.S. immigration law, founder and managing partner of Winter Law Practice, and is also helping immigration attorneys with Winter Immigration Law Academy. She is known for her innovative approach, revolutionizing immigration law and setting new standards for the legal landscape. Joni, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you, John. I am honored to be here. Whenever I hear an introduction, I'm like, who are they talking about? So I really thank you for having me on your show, and kudos for all the work that you're doing
Thank
in this
you
field
as
as
well.
well.
And before we begin, I like to have an intro about the guest. Can you give us, can you share with us who Dione is, what your expertise, experiences, and what keeps you busy these days?
Wow, what keeps me busy? What keeps me busy, John, is my goal to revolutionize immigration law. I hate starting to introduce myself by my profession because my profession is not who I am. I am by heart a legal rebel. I am an immigrant, was born on the beautiful island of Jamaica, immigrated to the United States as an adult. I was 20 years old when I came to the United States, and so when somebody asked me who Dionnie is the person that believes that everybody is entitled to follow their dreams and whatever that looks like. By profession, I am a licensed attorney, have been a licensed attorney for the last 19 years, and I have chosen the field of
It's
immigration law.
pretty common to hear a story that they immigrated when they're 5 years old, 6 years old, but you immigrated when you were 20 years old, and that must be tough. Can you share with us the experiences that you had when you first landed in the soil of the USA?
Wow, tough. It was scary because by the age of 20, John, you have your mindset, you're comfortable with where you are, you have your belief system, all of that is in place. So for me, when I migrated, my mother had migrated years earlier, right? Almost 7, maybe 8 years before I did. So she was already living in New York City. I was living in Jamaica. And so when she petitioned for me, and I'm like, so my first introduction to the United States was in New York City. So I'm leaving rural Jamaica and I'm going to this big city. And big by every means of it, the buildings, the subway, all of that is new to me. So for me as a 20-year-old, I was excitedly afraid because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know about rules. I didn't know about laws. All I knew was that, you know what? I'm going abroad, right? And so I knew it was going to be a good opportunity, but I was excitedly afraid.
I don't know if this is a word. It's tough when when you move from rural Jamaica and you move to one of the most CTS. I don't know if that's the word. One of the CTS city in the world. I mean, that must be tough, and it must be scary.
Yes. And you're right. It's one of the it so I didn't have like a little introduction. So I didn't go through like, okay, let's go to Miami or let's go to Tampa and then New York City. It was a big jump. I went from Jamaica to New York
Plus,
City, and
it's one
that
of
was
the
that.
most populated city. By the
Yes.
way, I really like
Yes.
your nickname, the Legal Rebel. Can you tell us why you chose that nickname? Because it's quite unique.
Why did I choose? So I became an attorney about 19 years ago. So when I went to law school back in 2002, I went to law school in a very small town, Lansing, Michigan. And everything about me was different. Everything, my looks, how I spoke. I had only lived in the United States for 6 years before I started law school. So everything about me was different. And I noticed that immediately, for good or bad. And so as I continued my profession, I never really called myself a legal rebel, but I considered myself very different. The term legal rebel came about when I started the academy, and I was like, who are these people that are doing things their way? They're delivering immigration services their way. They're using the law their way. And I came up with the term legal rebel because, we were doing things so different that I didn't want to call us attorneys or consultants or anything like that anymore. I'm like, we're doing things a little bit different. And so I came up with the word legal rebel, and it has now stuck with me. It has stuck with the business, and I'm living it. So that's kind of how
In
legal
one
rebel
of
came
your
about.
videos, I saw that you don't call your clients a client. You call them family, and it looks like you were on some kind of event. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. So I'm an immigration lawyer at heart, but I belong to the immigrant community, right? And so when you say client, it sounds kind of cold, very distant, like lawyer client, like like go over there and I'm over here. And in the firm, I wanted to practice what I preach. One, in large part because of my mother's experience when she was working with her immigration lawyer, how well she was treated. At the time, I was not a lawyer. But I loved that experience. And I said, the people that trust us, that are paying us boatloads of money, they're a part of our family. They're family members. And so I encourage everybody around me to treat these individuals like how we would want our family members to be treated. And I don't just say that, I mean it. I'm like, these are family members. So if they call, we answer the phone. If they get a bad experience, we get a bad experience. And so I really empower my team that we're going to treat our clients like family members. And so we call
That's
them family
fantastic, and
members.
I love the explanation why you treat them like family. And how was law school, especially because you were only a few years before you immigrated? I mean, yeah. Can you tell us about that?
Let me tell you, if I knew what law school was going to be, John, I would not have gone. I'm glad I was so ignorant. I'm glad at the time it was like 20, I was maybe like 27 when I went to law school, which is considered old, by the way. I didn't know this. But at the time, being a 27-year-old starting law school, that was kind of old because most people end up going to law school at like 21, 22, 23. Um, I did not know what the experience was going to be. If I had known, I probably would not have gone. It was a the toughest experience of my life because remember, I grew up in a common law system. So our laws in Jamaica are common law modeled off of the British system. We were colonized by the British. So that's the background I'm coming from. Here I am now, I'm in the United States, and it's all statutory, like legislative, and it was night and day. So for me, I think I'm going to put that at one of the hardest things that I've ever undertaken. and the cultural differences. I didn't have a background in the United States where, you go to high school here, you understand the Constitution, you understand a bill. I didn't have that background. So I went to law school cold after doing my bachelor's degree. So for me, I think it was just a night and day
And especially
experience
because
for me.
when you go to another country, I mean, the culture of the people is different. But if you go to to a school, to a university, that's a whole another culture that you got to learn.
Yes. Yes.
And by the
I
way, can you
agree. I
tell us the
agree.
difference on the laws here in the United States versus the laws in versus the common law?
It's way different. So in, like, for example, culturally in Jamaica, right? We were colonized by the British. So a lot of what we do is based on maybe a case that happened before, common law. Meaning meaning I sue you over my goat or my cow. And so now this case takes precedence, meaning when another case like that happens, we use this case. Here in the United States, there are statutes, there are laws that are written. More specifically, I spend a lot of time with the Immigration and Nationality Act. It's a set of rules that are written, and this is what we're going to follow. So there's no case by case by case. This is the law. The law says when this happens, then this is what we're going to do. So that's the difference, as opposed to in Jamaica, you would go to the judge and say, Your Honor, the last time this goat was stolen, this is what happened. That is not how the United States work. The legislatures have written the law, and we're going to follow that law. And then we get to interpret it, right? The courts interpret these laws. So it's a whole
Do
different
you think
night
it's
and day
more
scenario.
complicated that way?
I think it's more complicated, yes, because then the decision makers are not a part of the community. The decision makers are sitting over here. Whereas I feel in Jamaica, our decision makers understand the community. They're in touch with the community. It's like community policing, right? They know the people. Here, the laws are just written with really no one in mind. It's just written, it's cold. It's like this is what happens if you come across the border. You can't, this, it doesn't matter. Okay, you came across the border, you haven't broken any other rules, you have not broken any other laws. This is the path that you must take. So I find the laws here to be a little bit more harsh, for lack of a
So
better word.
basically, the law is more like in Jamaica, we're community. At the end of the day, we want to go with something that would, work for the both of you. But here, it's like, our goal is to
Mhm.
just enforce the law, and however we want to enforce the law is that's just how we're gonna do it. I don't care if, it might be destroy your life or whatever. I don't care. So basically, that's how it
Good
is.
luck. Good luck. Yes. World of
That's
difference.
very
Absolute
different.
world
Yeah.
of difference. Yes. Kind of cold. Yes. Kind of cold.
What was it like to be admitted in the U.S. Supreme Court?
Ooh. Um, I wish my mother was here because she cried. So the United States Supreme Court is the highest court in the land, in the United States. It's the highest court. And for me as a professional, I knew I wanted to be at this level. So I still remember, going into Washington, D.C., getting my application done. You must have been a practicing attorney for 5 years or more. And somebody has to swear you in. And at the time, Justice Roberts was the chief justice of the court. And I remember when he called my name, and it felt like out of body experience. Like, you hear your name, but you're like, that can't be my name. Like Dionnie Suzette Winter Funde. I'm like, it's this out of body experience because as a little girl growing up, and it sounds cliche, little girl growing up in rural Jamaica, that was not even a part of my dream. I never sat down and said, you know what, one day I'm gonna get admitted to the United States. That was not, when I say it was not a part of my dream, I would not even know how to dream to become a part of the Supreme Court. That would not have been on my list. So for me, it was one, a lesson a lesson in believing in yourself, and two, a lesson in how can I inspire others to dream even bigger, right? So to get admitted to the United States Supreme Court and to have my mother, my immigrant mother, watching, oh, it takes the cake. It was a high point of my career. It was a high point. In fact, I have the certificate right behind me. I'm literally sitting. I'm in my studio, and
That's
that's from the
amazing.
Supreme Court. I
And I'm gonna
literally have
tell
it
you right
behind
now, there's a lot of attorneys who have been born in the United States, who have known how the Constitution worked for their whole life, who will never be admitted on the U.S. Supreme Court. So that's an amazing achievement, and I want to congratulate you.
me. Thank you,
And
John.
by the
Thank you
way,
so much.
when you first became a lawyer, did you start winter law practice immediately, or did you work for another firm?
No, when I first of all, I struggled to pass the bar exam. So in the United States, you know this, but for those that are listening, just because you go to law school, just because you've spent 4 years on a bachelor's degree, 3 years in law school, John, it does not mean you can practice law. That's not, it just means you have the right to sit for the bar exam, right? So it's not like you can just say, okay, I went to law school, I went to my bachelor's, I've done law school, let me go practice law. That is not how it works in the United States. You have to sit for and pass your bar exam. The bar exam is for 2 days, 12 hours, and it is administered at the time. This is now 2005 in every state. So for me to practice law in Michigan, I have to sit for the Michigan bar. For me to practice law in New York, I have to sit for the New York bar. For me to practice law in New Mexico, I got to sit for the New Mexico bar. Obviously, things have changed over the years, but back then, 2005, that's how it worked. So once I came out of law school, I had to sit for the bar exam. So I sat for first New York, New Jersey, because I had lived in New York. Failed New York, passed New Jersey. Failed New York, passed New Jersey. And then I took Michigan, and then I passed Michigan. I still haven't passed New York, by the way. I took it twice. New York is one of the hardest bar. Kudos to everybody who passed the New York bar exam. So I didn't practice law immediately because I had to pass my bars first. Once I did, I started to do little cases on the side. I used to call it shoe money. Believe it or not, John, back in 2005, when you started a solo practice, people would laugh at you saying you can't get a job. You're doing a little law firm on your own because you can't get a job. It's not like now where solo practice is welcomed, right? So I did my little shoe money practice while I worked for others. So I worked for someone else, but then on the side, I'm like, let me take a couple immigrant, because I knew how to do immigration cases because of my mother's experience, because of my family's experience. I kind of understood some of the process. And so I did that before. I think winter law came a little bit later formally, but I was just taking what I call
Did
shoe
you
money
enjoy doing
cases.
those Schumann cases?
Love it. Love it. I absolutely, absolutely love it. You know why? The community I was serving, there were not many people that looked like me that was doing immigration law. Like for example, in the Jamaican community, believe it or not, their lawyers are primarily Jewish. They trust the Jewish lawyers more than how they would trust their own. So I've had to break down some of those beliefs so they can start having trust in people that look like them, that sounds like them. So I spent a lot
And
of
is
time
that when
doing that.
you fell in love on being part of the community?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
fantastic. And
Absolutely.
I really like
Absolutely.
the fact that you need to take an exam to actually be an attorney. Because I can assure you, there's a lot of people that are
Hmm.
in universities right now who are doing nothing, but in a few years will graduate. And that's a shame. And yeah, it's
Hmm.
a pretty great
Hmm.
assurance that you actually know what you do.
Thank
And
you. Thank you,
what
John.
was the vision behind founding Winter Immigration Law Academy?
All right. So, John, I spent many years as the director of one of the largest law schools in the country. My role was to ensure that law students were prepared for the practice of law. I also spent many years working for the State Bar of Michigan, where I regulated attorneys. And so when I saw what was happening in the field of immigration law, I noticed one, that there wasn't a lot of pride. Like, like immigration lawyers, we were not getting a lot of respect. Like, if you told somebody, oh, I'm an immigration lawyer, they actually felt sorry for you. Because if you say, I'm a corporate lawyer, or I work on Wall Street, or I'm a personal injury lawyer, you get a lot of respect. Immigration lawyers, we were not getting any respect, man. It was kind of like, oh, I feel so sorry, because they were not giving the immigration community any, like, oh, you can't afford to pay your bills, right? So they felt sorry for the lawyers, because in their minds we were serving a community who could not afford to pay, which is so far from the truth, right? But that's how it was seen. So I wanted, when I started the academy back in 2020, it was my love of education and my love of the law, and I wanted to add dignity, I wanted to add excitement back to the field of immigration law. I wanted people to choose immigration law as a true career path, not because they couldn't get a job, or not because it was the last thing left on the menu. I didn't want that. I wanted it to be, you know what? I'm going to choose immigration law as a practice because I want to serve my community. I didn't want it to be, you know what? I've tried everything else and it has failed. So I'm just going to go throw up a shingle and say I'm going to do immigration law. So I really wanted to add the dignity back to this area of
I
practice.
like the fact that you said that you want to go to immigration law because you chose it, not because it's a last resort. I've been saying this to some real estate agents. The fact that you chose to be a real estate agent and not just because it's a last resort gives you so much advantage than those others that just, were forced to be a real estate agent because you actually want and love what you do, and that gives you an advantage. I mean, people like people who loves what they do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love what I do. I
When
absolutely
I
love what
checked
I do.
out Winter Immigration Law Academy, so this is the academy side, I saw that there was a part. There's two parts. There's the part where you. Let me just check my notes here. So there's the part where you teach
Sure,
young
sure.
immigration lawyers on how to become the go-to consultant, and there's also a part where I think it was a free course that you help on get naturalized using the N400. So which is amazing, by the way.
Mhm. Thank you. So the Immigration Law Academy is, I'm going to call it, just like you said, it's very innovative. Initially, John, when we started the academy, we were focusing on immigration lawyers, right? Now we've made the switch, and our focus has been on what we call non attorneys. These are individuals that have not gone to law school like myself. Um, so, de donde eres, John?
I don't. Can you repeat that? I'm from the
Where are you
Philippines.
from? Where are you?
Yeah.
Philippines. All right. So, in the United States, you have to be an attorney in order to practice immigration law. All right. However, we have a big problem in the United States where non attorneys are doing what lawyers are doing. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I don't know if you're familiar. Okay. So that is a huge problem in the United States. Remember, I explained 4 years I went to get my bachelor's, 3 years for law school. In the United States, non attorneys can offer immigration services, but they are limited. So, what we are doing in the Immigration Law Academy is making sure these non attorneys understand what they can and cannot do. And that is the innovation behind the Winter Immigration Law Academy. So, when we say here are some courses, like for example, the N400, that is free to anybody who wants it, because we don't want one for you to mess up anybody else's paperwork or even your own. Immigration law is very complicated. So the free N400 course you're talking about, that is so people do not mess up other people's paperwork and or mess up their own paperwork.
That's amazing. I was gonna ask why it's important for them to know what they can and cannot do, but I think you've explained it amazingly. And I think it's also great because some of the
Yes.
people who wants to immigrate, they'd have more background on what they're trying to do and not just, relying on the information their attorney is giving them. Because sometimes people can still make
Yes.
mistake even if you're an attorney, and it's hard to mess up your own application.
Yes. Yes. And just so you know,
Yeah,
US immigration law is very complicated. A lot of people think it's, oh, let me get this piece of paper,
yeah,
let me fill it out and submit it. It's a little bit more complicated than that. And so that's
yeah.
the beginning, that's the reason behind the Winter Immigration
And
Law
how?
Academy.
What is your aim on revolutionizing immigration law? What specifically do you want to achieve for that?
I want every single individual, whether they cross the border, whether they land at John F. Kennedy Airport, whether they land in Washington, D.C., doesn't matter how they enter the United States. I want them, John, to have the proper access to the correct information when it comes to immigration law. That's all. I don't want them to be misled. I don't want them to sit on their rights. For example, we have highly qualified individuals in the United States that have not taken advantage of all of the laws that are here for them because they don't know. They don't know. And maybe their cousin told them something and they listened to the cousin. Maybe their uncle went through a process and then, we call them the community lawyers. Maybe they went through the process and now they tell you, okay, John, don't do this, don't do that. Even though your story is different from theirs. So when I say I want to revolutionize immigration law, I want everyone to have access to the right information and at the right time because sometimes the longer you wait, a lot of options are off the table for you because you waited too long. So I want them to be very much aware of their rights. What are they entitled to? Right? You have some people who think, okay, I'm here on a student visa. That's it. There's nothing left for me. There's so many other options. You have people who come across the border. Oh, they only want to file asylum. You have people who have been the victim of a crime that they don't know. They think because I'm here undocumented, I'm not even going to call the police. So when I say I want to revolutionize immigration law, that's what I mean. I want our community, and by my community, I don't mean Jamaicans. I mean the immigrant community, whether you enter lawfully, enter unlawfully, whether you're here on a visitor's visa, you're here on a student visa, I want you to understand what your rights are.
So,
I really
in
do.
to make it short, you want to help them help themselves. That's amazing.
Yes. Yes. I love how you say, I want to help you to help yourself. Don't just sit back
Very
and get the
salesy,
wrong
huh?
information.
I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for
You
you.
see, I'm stealing that one, John. I want to help
Very
you help
salesy.
yourself. Help
And can
yourself.
you
I
talk
love
about
it.
some innovative practices that you implemented in how you do legal work?
All right, one of the top ones I'm proud of is I go where my family members are. In the field of immigration law, traditionally, the immigrant, we expect them pack up your bags and come to our office, right? Come and see us. It doesn't matter if you're at work. It doesn't matter if you don't know what bus to take, what train to take. It was very common. The practice of law was that we're going to open up this office and it doesn't matter what's in your world, you are expected to come and find us and meet with us on our time. One of the innovations that I've led is we will go where you are. So, for example, if you're in Texas and you would like us to represent you, yes, we can represent you there. We will go where you are. That's one of the things that we are proud of within our firm. The second thing I am proud of is the offering of immigration services by non-attorneys who are highly trained and certified. Highly trained and certified. That's a huge innovation for us because one, now you're not no longer getting the wrong information, and two, the cost to the immigrant, the cost to the family members will be less because now you're not paying the fees that you
Yeah,
would
because
typically
sometimes you
pay
don't
an
need
attorney.
the services of the attorney per se. Sometimes you just need the
You
legal
don't.
advice.
Yes, just a little, just guide me correctly. Like the N400, for example, that you talked about. That course I just offered to the public for free because I'm thinking, if you meet all these qualifications, do you really need to pay me two, three, $4,000? Probably not. Probably not, right? There is a place, John, for an attorney. I'm not going to take that away. There is a place for attorneys, but there's some instances where, like you said, I can help you help
Yeah,
yourself
that's right.
for less.
And I think
Saves
it
you,
removes
saves
the
you some money.
barrier of that. I don't want to call my attorney. I have this problem. I have this question, but I don't want to call them because it costs a lot. It removes that
Hmm.
barrier, and it's
Hmm.
amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that is something, I think that's,
Yeah,
like you said, a part of the innovation. Because let's
yeah,
admit the globe is changing, not just the United States, how people
yeah.
move around the globe is changing. So I think the delivery of legal services have to
Yeah,
change. The practice of law have to change. So it's not me,
that's
it's the
amazing.
globe.
And when you said you go to your family members, to your family members, do you mean like you go to their location or just you go to their state?
I go to their house, I go to their coffee shops, I go to their tea shops, I go to their church, I go where they live, I go
That's
where they want
amazing
us to
because the
go.
only way you can truly help somebody to the highest level is for you to know who they are.
Not just the state, we go where they are. They're family
Yeah.
members that, you know what, I want to meet you over here. Sure, I'll see you
Yeah.
there. Or a team member
What
of
do you
mine
think
will
is
see
the
you there.
advantage of doing that? Besides of the fact that you will not confuse them on where they need to go or what they need to do. What other advantages are there?
I think
Yeah.
it's important for me to understand the
Yeah.
community that I represent. And it's you cannot do that from the brick walls of your offices. And the more I understand of the community, the more services I can offer. Sometimes, like, a community just needs to know who to call. They need to know their rights. If I get pulled over by the police, what are my rights, even though I am undocumented? If a family member gets arrested, who do I call? So some of this is education. I'm able to educate the community. So sometimes it's not just legal advice or, oh, fill out this form. Sometimes it's, hey, we didn't get our social security card. Where do we go? Now, if I don't understand the community, how would I know where the closest social security office is? How would I know how that social security office is handling somebody from Mexico with an O visa because they think everybody from Mexico came across the border? So these are conversations that I have to have. And the only way I can know this is if I'm a part of that community and I understand
You
what the
truly
community is
do
going
become a
through.
family member. That's amazing. And
Yes.
what is the biggest
Yes, you
problem
do.
and challenges that you currently see in the field of immigration law in the US?
I think what I see is that individuals don't realize that they can get ahead. They can get ahead with their immigration problems. They wait until something happens. They don't understand what rights they have. You have individuals that will live, we call it living under the radar. They just, for decades, not just years, for decades, not understanding that, you know what, I'm eligible to apply for this, or my child can apply for me, or our community not understanding some of the more unused visas, like employment based, the EB categories. And I don't want to bore you, but there's so many other kinds of visas that are available. And then what I see is a lot of communities not realizing that they're eligible. They will just assume this is not for me. This is not. I see even with some of our clients, I'm like, you have extraordinary abilities. We could do an EB1 for you. They're like, what's that? Tell them about an asylum. If you say apply for asylum, everybody knows about asylum. So one of the big challenges I see is that our community not having the right and at the right time, because immigration law is time sensitive. everything is do this within 1 year, do this. It tells you when you need to do something. So for me, the big challenge I see is that we don't have the right information to know that we qualify for
EB1
certain
visa,
things.
that's the part on the work visa, right? Yeah,
It's under employment based, yes, but it's where
uh,
you petition for yourself. So you don't need an employer, right? The EVs, like you don't need the employer. You can petition for yourself. Granted,
yeah,
there are some qualifications, but my point is most people don't even realize
yeah,
that they could have done that instead of coming into the United
yeah.
States, messing up their student visa. Then they marry someone, then the person doesn't want to do the right thing, and now it begins a
Can
host of other
undocumented
problems for
people
them.
apply for that? Yeah,
It depends. It depends when you came in. A lot of these visa
yeah.
might be off the table
I
based
think
on
some
your
people
entry.
might have,
Based
are
on your
scared to find out their rights just because of the fact that I might get sent back if I get on the radar.
Here's the thing, and I love that question, John. The government knows who's here. We know who's here. Not we, the government. They
Everything's
know you're
tracked.
here. Everything is straight. You think the government doesn't know you're here? They know you're here.
Yeah.
You're just considered a low priority. So if you think for a second you're hiding, guess what? You're hiding in plain sight because they know
Oh
who's
man.
here. The thing is, most of if you're
Yeah.
undocumented, you're considered like low priority. So they're not going to come knocking at your door, John. I mean, you go to work, you come home, they're not going to knock at your door. But if something happens and you come into contact with law enforcement, then
Yeah.
they're going to put you in proceedings. And I always say you need to get out ahead of your immigration matter and not wait for the government to find you. But they know you're here. You're not putting yourself on the radar. This is one of the most modern countries in the universe. They know who's here. That is why they can count and say 160,000 people entered the border. They know you're
They
here.
and
I'm
how do
sorry.
you see the current state of immigration law evolving in the following years?
How do I see it? That's a political question because with the state of immigration law, it really has to do with who's in power and what they're going to do, whether they're going to help immigrants or whether they're going to be strong against immigrants. So it really comes down, I think, to the politics of it all. I've seen the law change in ways where some people can benefit. Like now we see President Biden coming up with a new executive order that could help over 500,000 immigrant families. I think that's good, right? So we want to make sure that people take advantage of that and not let that pass them by if they qualify. And for me, I would like to see less qualified people crossing the borders illegally. I really would like to see people
Yeah.
that are highly qualified take advantage of the law before they come across the border. Because once you come across, it really
Yeah.
changes things for you and your family. So I would like to see them, you know what, talk to an attorney, even if if you're overseas and you want to enter the United States, talk to an attorney, talk to a consultant before you make that
Yeah, and I
decision on
think it's
how
very
you
important
enter.
that, the very highly qualified people actually come in legally, because if they try to cross the border or try to do other methods to, just go in illegally,
Mhm.
the opportunities just dwindles.
It's like a
Yeah.
buffet and the door gets
You can
shut
do these
on your
things, but
face.
you can't do it now.
It takes
And for
Mhm.
lawyers who wants to
Yeah.
start their own firm, what advice can you give to them?
Do it from the heart. If you don't care about the community, don't start a practice because it will eat at you. If you want to start, first of all, pick a niche, like find a community that you want to work with, find a community that you feel connected to, find a community that needs your service. Don't just go out there and say, oh, I'm going to do all things immigration law. Immigration law is a complicated field. You're either going to do deportation defense, you can do employment based, family based, but don't just put up a sign and say all things immigration. you will get in trouble. You will,
You
because
want
it's
to
complicated.
find where you
Highly
specialize at.
complicated.
So basically.
Absolutely. Find your niche. Find your niche. Pick a community and just find the niche in that community and serve at the
How do you
highest level.
envision, many people are starting to use ChatGPT for legal advice instead of going to lawyers. Even if AI becomes perfect and doesn't mess up the answers that they give, how will you differentiate yourself in your law firm? How will you stand out? And how can you say that, hey, I know ChatGPT or other tools can do that, still work with us?
So I embrace Chat GPT because we have to embrace technology. I think what we're going to add is the human touch. Immigration law is still human centered, right? So as much as Chat GPT is going to tell you all of this, what Chat doesn't have is our 19, in our firm we have about 40 years experience. Chat doesn't have that. And I we embrace Chat. You have to. You have to embrace innovation. You have to embrace technology. I think what we can see now, or how we'll see changes, John, is where the family member is going to be a part, an active part of their own representation. Gone are the days when they come in with all the paperwork, they give it to you, and you solve the problem. Now we can use those family members to help in those complicated cases. For example, if ICE says this, that family member is so educated that they can help you to say, that's not what happened. That is not how it happened. So now, because of technology, because of TikTok, because of the mass spread of information, family members now are more educated, which I love. They understand immigration law, which I love. And now they can be an active part of their representation. And we still add that human touch, right? Because they
And I
still need
think
that human touch.
ChatGPT or any other tools, what the thing that they'll never have is the fact that you have experience and you know how to handle specific situations with specific variables.
I love it. Thanks,
And
John. Thank you so much. I need you on my team.
and
I love
yeah,
it. I love it.
you practice law for a very long time. You've taken the bar on the year that I was born. So you are, yeah.
Oh my God, I'm old, John. I'm old in a good
I
way.
prefer the term
Oh my
wise.
gosh.
Uh,
Okay, I'm wise. I even have the gray hair to show it. I
if
have the
you
gray hair to
could
show it.
give
I
an
have it.
advice to your younger self, what would it be?
I love that question. If I could give, I would probably say thank you. If I were writing a love note to the younger Dionnie, I would say thank you because of the patience, failing the bar, taking the bar again, getting fired, getting hired, everything that she would have done. I think it would have been a thank you. Thank you for willingness to change. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for embracing all things. Right? So it would be
That's
thank
great.
you.
And what message would you like to leave our listeners regarding the future of maybe they want to immigrate to US? What advice would you give to them?
Embrace change and get the right information before you make a move. Even if it means, John, talking to two attorneys, three consultants, don't just rely on your family members. I love that family members can share their journey or their story. I love that. But I would love your listeners, if they're interested in migrating to the United States specifically, to understand that every single story is unique. Your story can drive your immigration journey, but every single story is unique. Just because John did this doesn't mean you should do this. Just because Dionnie did this and succeeded doesn't mean that you're going to do it and succeed. So if you have a plan to immigrate, talk to one or two attorneys. Why? I love to get like a difference of opinion. And then you can run it by your family members and then you make an informed and educated decision on
You
your
know, I like the
immigration
fact that you
journey.
said everyone's story is unique. And I don't know if this just me, but I try to stay away from people that I don't know, just because of the fact that if I get to know you, then I care about you and I'd get invested. It's just the fact that you know somebody and basically humanizes them in your eyes. Fascinating how the human brain works.
Right.
And what
Love it, love it,
advice
love it.
would you give to anyone just about life generally?
Life is what you make of it, and how
Yeah,
our parents lived isn't how we have to live. Like,
yeah,
go break the rules. If you're young, kind of like what you're doing,
yeah,
do not follow the rules. And if there are women listening, especially
yeah,
minority women, black, brown, just remember, well behaved women never make history. So don't behave at all. Break all the rules and do not behave. Because thanks to technology, thank you to COVID, thank you to all these things that this generation has experienced, it's like
yeah,
it changes the game. Changes where we can. Right now, I have court
yeah,
at 1 o'clock in New York. I'm sitting in Tampa, Florida. The family members that I'm representing is sitting in Orlando, Florida, and we're going to be in court at 1 o'clock. If you had told me this 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, I would say no. I'd have to get on a plane because the judge would not say to me, come to court on that computer screen. People don't realize how much that has changed. 4 years ago, the judge would expect
yeah.
me to get in a plane, fly to New York for a 10-minute hearing.
Basically, technology
So
makes it
technology,
almost fair for everyone. Level playing field. Yeah,
everyone now have access. That's why people in the Philippines, in Mexico, in Colombia, in
yeah,
Jamaica, I can talk to them about US immigration, and they're getting that information where a
yeah.
few years ago that was not possible. And not only from me, but from many lawyers like myself, many
And
consultants like myself.
it's amazing how easy it is to actually do something nowadays because of technology. And I don't think a lot of people is taking advantage of that. I mean, it's basically the second gold rush. Needs to be fast. Yeah,
It is. It is. And I said to people,
yeah,
I'm like, do you guys realize where you're living and the time frame?
yeah.
It's the
It's what
second
I'm
gold
saying.
rush.
It's the
It's the
fact
second
that we
gold.
have AI right now. You can have employees for pennies just because of AI, and a lot of people are not taking advantage of that.
Thanks
It's
to
such a shame. They're still sitting on their house just watching TV all day. Don't
oh
do that. Take advantage of this.
no.
It's such a short period of time, really.
Yes. Take
I mean,
advantage.
almost all opportunities, it's a very limited short window, and I think people should take advantage of it. And last but not the least, where can our listeners find you?
All right, guys, if you're listening, hear me out. You can find me on every social media platform. I embrace social media, have always embraced social media. Dionnie Wynter Pfunde. Dionnie, Dionnie. Winter like the season, but with a Y. Winter Funde. You can find me on TikTok, Immigration Boss. You can find me on Facebook, Dionnie Wynter Funde. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on X. You can find me on YouTube. If you live under a rock and you're not embracing social media, you can ring my phone, 813-815-3529. 813-815-3529. Immigration Boss, you can find me on any platform. And then if not, you can ring my phone.
That's
Someone
amazing.
will answer.
Again, thank you, Diony, for joining us. The Legal Rebel, everyone. And you really need to patent that and put heavy SEO on that nickname. That's gonna make it big.
All right, all right. We gotta talk about that. We
Need
gotta
to
talk
patent
about
that.
that. Thank you, John. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
I have like the Legal Rebel t-shirts. I do all of that.
Yeah. You
Legal
don't
Rebel.
forget
So
it.
thank you so
It's
much.
a phrase that you don't forget. Again, thank you for joining us and have a fascinating day.
Thank you, John. And thank you so much for having me. And thank you to your listeners for listening. And kudos to you for all that you have accomplished and more, all the more.
That's all for today's episode of the New World Podcast. We have explored some fascinating topics with our amazing guests, shedding light on the upcoming New World. If you enjoyed today's episode and today's discussion and want to stay updated on the future episodes, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to the podcast. And if you found value on what we have discussed, please consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Remember, if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, or if you are interested in being a guest in the future, please feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or email me at john.paul@aicinix.com and add New World Podcast, all capital, in the subject line so I can see it. I always love hearing from our listeners. And don't forget to check out our amazing guests. You can find more information about them by the contact details we provided earlier. Again, thank you for tuning in on the New World Podcast. I know your time is very important and I try to always make the next episode better than the last. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, keep innovating. This is John Paul Flores signing off from the New World Podcast.